I'm the boy in your other phone, lighting up inside your drawer at home, all alone, pushing 40 in the friend zone. We talk and then you walk away every day. Oh, you don't think twice about me, and maybe you're right to doubt me, but if you give me just one night, you're gonna see me in a new light. Yeah, if you give me just one night to meet you underneath the moonlight. Oh, I wanna take two, I wanna break through, I wanna know the real thing about you, so I can see you in a new light. Take a ride up to Malibu, I just wanna sit and look at you, look at you. What would it matter if your friends knew? Who cares what other people say anyway? Oh, we can go far from here and make a new world together, babe. 'Cause if you give me just one night, you're gonna see me in a new light. Yeah, if you give me just one night to meet you underneath the moonlight. Oh, I wanna take two, I wanna break through, I wanna know the real thing about you, so I can see you in a new light. Yeah, if you give me just one night, you're gonna see me in a new light. Yeah, if you give me just one night to meet you underneath the moonlight. What do I do with all this? What do I do with all this love that's running through my veins for you? What do I do with all this? What do I do with all this love that's running through my veins for you? What do I do with all this? What do I do with all this love that's running through my veins for you? What do I do with all this? What do I do with all this?
It's funny all the shit we take for granted is bound to blow up in your face. I said it once before and I meant it. Me, myself, and I went separate ways. Went separate ways. I didn't know just where to go, where to run and where to hide. It took some time to realize this life is mine, no compromise. It's funny all this shit we take for granted. I will let the sun shine on my face. I got my mind made up, and I ain't gonna stop. Gonna be on top. I got my mind made up. I got my mind made up. I got my mind made up, and I ain't gonna stop. Gonna be on top. I got my mind made up. Ooh, 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 ooh. Honey on her lips is what I tasted, but how it turned to bittersweet. Yet I don't think those days are wasted. Just gotta get up on my feet, yeah. I got my mind made up, and I ain't gonna stop. Gonna be on top. I got my mind made up. I got my mind made up. And I ain't gonna stop. Gonna be on top. I got my mind made up. I got my mind made. I got my mind made. I got my mind made up. I got my mind made. I got my mind made. I got my mind made up. I got my mind made up. And I ain't gonna stop. Gonna be on top. I got my mind made up. I got my mind made up. I got my mind made up. I got my mind, and I ain't gonna stop. I got my mind, gonna be on top. I got my mind made up.
Baby, I think of you when I'm all alone and it's sad past you. Bet you think about it too. Can't nobody love you like I do. Baby, I think of you when I'm all alone and it's sad past you. Bet you think about it too. Can't nobody love you like I do. 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 Baby, I think of you when I'm all alone and it's sad past you. Bet you think about it too. Can't nobody love you like I do. Baby, I think of you when I'm all alone and it's sad past you. Bet you think about it too. Can't nobody love you like I do. Like I do. Like I do. Like I do.
Now I like dollars, I like diamonds, I like stunning, I like shining, I like $1,000,000 deals. Where's my pen? Bitch, I'm signing. I like those Balenciagas, the ones that look like socks. I like going to the Tula. I put rocks all in my watch. I like texts from my exes when they want a second chance. I like proving niggas wrong. I do what they say I can't. They call me Cardi, Cardi, banging body, spicy mommy, hot tamale, hotter than a Somali. Ferg, off the stoop, jump in the coupe. Big dip on top of the roof, flexing on bitches as hard as I can. Eating halal, driving a lamb. So that bitch, I'm sorry though. Got my coins like Mario. Yeah, they call me Cardi B. I run this shit like cardio. I'm in district in the chain. Certified, you know I'm gang, 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 gang. Drop the top and blow the brand. Oh, he's so handsome, what's his name? I need the dollars to change. Beat it up like piñatas. Tell the job to close the curtains. That bitch make you nervous. Cardi B.
Chambean, chambean, pero no jalan. Tú compras todas las Jordan, a mí me las regalan. I spend in the club, what you have in the bank. This is the new religion bank, el Latino gang. Yeah, trato de hacer dieta, pero es que en el closet tengo mucha grasa. Ya mudé la Gucci pa' dentro de casa, yeah. Cabrón, a ti no te conocen ni en plaza. El diablo me llama, pero Jesucristo me abraza. Guerrero como Eddie, que viva la raza, yeah. Me gustan boricua, me gustan cubana. Me gusta el acento de la colombiana. Como me ve el culo la dominicana. Lo rico que me chinga la venezolana. Andamos activos, perico, pim, pim. Billetes de 100 en el maletín. Que retumbe el bajo y Valentín, yeah. Aquí prohibido amar, dile charitín. Que per pico le tengo claritín. Yo llego a la disco y se forma el motín.
Diamond District in the chain. Certified, you know I'm gang, 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 gang. Drop the top and blow the brand. Oh, he's so handsome, what's his name? I need the dollars to change. Beat it up like piñatas. Tell the job to close the curtains. That bitch make you nervous.
Como Celia Cruz tengo el azúcar. Tú que va medio y se fue de pecho como Ginny Luca. Te vamos a tumbar la peluca y arranca pa'l carajo, cabrón, que a ti no te va a pasar la boca. Mi tele y Valenciaga me reciben en la entrada. Para, sí, like I'm Lady Gaga. Y no te me hagas, que en cover de vivo tú has visto mi cara. No salgo de tu mente, donde quiera que viajes, he escuchado mi gente. Ya no soy high, soy como el testa rosa. Soy el que se la vive y también el que la goza. Goza es la cosa, mami.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I was wondering, I'm starting up on a project for a test rig to test electronic equipment that should drive all kind of robots and stuff. Now I have a bit of problem of visualizing how to visualize the added values in a storyboard of a test rig that is mainly computer software that mimics what those robots will be doing. That's not really industrial. It's when I started drawing, I had a problem how to visualize that. Is that a common thing, or should I take a step back somehow? Or
Well, I recommend starting like just drawing where you
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's try this again. I got some special UX water so that, this is going to do the trick right here. So what I was trying to say about the mouse, here's the verbatim, which is very interesting. You can look it up. It's kind of living history. So this is, with NASA's funding, the team, Douglas Engelbart and William English, approached NASA in 1966 and said, let's test them and determine the answer once and for all, which is the best pointing device for a computer. Is it a light pen, joystick? The mouse obviously was in play. Right, so with NASA's funding, the team developed a set of simple tasks and timed a group of volunteers in doing those tasks with various devices. Now, 1964, right? For example, a computer would generate an object in a random position on the screen and the cursor somewhere else, and they timed how long it took the users to move the cursor to the object. It quickly became clear that the mouse outperformed all other devices. Devices like the light pen simply took too much time, repeatedly requiring the user to pick up the pointer and reach all the way across the screen, which was very tiresome. So here's your example of a minimum viable prototype. Now, could they have done this with, say, just a block of wood with no electronics in it? Probably not as well, right? Because the kind of question they're actually trying to answer is a little more involved, and it involved timing. So they had to put electronic components into that thing. But the shell was still very easy to make, right? And it just has a little button on it. So my point to you guys is that you have to make a prototype. This whole idea of a minimum viable prototype is the idea that a prototype reflects the correct doneness of your project. So your very first prototype is actually this. This is your first prototype that you already made today. You can literally go up to people. In fact, that's a legitimate UX technique, is you go up to your customer and you say, do you do this? Which step looks hard? Which steps looks easy? You find a whole lot of situations. Do you ever get this payoff, or is there a different payoff at the end? Where do you do the tasks, right? You can validate this thing. So that's your first prototype. Here's kind of the second version that you can go up to using foam boards, right? Just this is like a simple remote control with like simple tools you can make. Ooh, there we go. Here's one with sort of interactive inserts, but again, you get some ergonomic information about your project, right? Are these buttons appropriate? Is this kind of the right thing? This is Nintendo. One of the prototypes people made. You can put electronics in it as the next step and actually see if people can use it. Is this the right kind of responsiveness and other things? And then, last but not least, you can make it move around like a robot. So this is not a trash can, it's an actual, supposed to be a telepresence robot with an arm, right? But this thing actually moves around. It's made out of foam boards. And it's quite an effective prototype. But again, make it appropriate to whatever the problem you're trying to solve. So I call this a minimum viable prototype. So use that principle to create your project and then test it with the customers. So I was going to stop at this point. If there are any questions of anything we talked about, storyboarding, anything. Somebody came up to me and said, I had difficulty figuring out how to draw my use case, and what I suggested was, and I thought I'll pass that along because it was a really good conversation, was first just focus on where the customer is. What environment are they in, right? Just hold that firmly in your mind, draw that, and then the rest will flow from there. If you're still stuck, then draw the end state, right? This is the payoff slide. And then just see how you can get from here to there. And if you're still stuck, sometimes it's worth drawing out kind of the before and after. So draw out what's going on right now and how your app then, or your controller or device or whatever it is you're building, will help solve for a different outcome. Does that make sense? So those are useful techniques to get unstuck, because a lot of these digital industrial stuff is really complex and intertwined and intertwingled. Any other questions? If not, we can keep going. Yeah. Uh, yeah, so they have trouble, if I understand it correctly, they have trouble visualizing your prototype as the real product? Or is it a different problem? I want to make sure I answer the right question.
No, it's more like that the prototype already looks so convincing.
I see. So it was the $40 million problem then, the one that we started at the beginning. That's a tough one, because that prototype actually fooled some salespeople, and they went and sold the product, and they were like, "Oh crap, we have to like roll it back." And you don't understand. We made a deal. I'm like, that's not a product. There's no product there, right? So you kind of, if the customers want it, you kind of have a nice problem on your hands, because you can mobilize and say, it's coming. Here's a little beta for you, right? So you can start shipping quickly. Just take advanced orders, just say coming in 3 months or whatever, and do like Microsoft, deliver it with a lot of bugs, and have the customers point that out and fix it. Hey, you wanted it, right? Hey, you paid. There you go. So I'd say it's the same kind of answer as like don't fall in love with your darlings or kill your darlings principle. I like to go and test a lot of real easy prototypes before I kind of make it into a product. Sometimes that's not possible. But the more lower fidelity stuff is, the more people are like to respond in an honest, unbiased way. If you give them something that's really polished, they might say, "Oh, what do you think?" They'll be like, "Well, the color of blue is kind of not blue enough," or "It's not Dutch blue. We needed to make it Dutch blue." Okay, all right, that kind of thing. But if you give them like something really rough, they'll say, "Oh, I don't need this thing at all. This thing sucks, right? Not going to use it." Right. Or then they might be nicer and say, "Oh, this guy down the street, he might use it. I don't really do that kind of stuff." And then it's nobody wants it, or at least you're not talking to the right customer yet. So my recommendation is really try to do the progression. At least take a couple of hours and make something really low fidelity before you invest months and months in doing it. Right now, that's some of my clients are like that, and like we need to like run at 1,000 miles an hour, and you actually save time by going slowly. You go fast by going slower, because you don't fall in love with like your own BS, we call it. Right. Does that make sense? It's a human nature. We kind of tend to do that. Like this one, for example. Oh, there you go. That's a perfect example of what I was talking about. So these guys actually shipped this. Isn't that nice? So this is from, I don't want to pick on the name, but it's up there on screen. So could you move the light just a little bit? Because then they can't see all the beauty of this. Because look, there's smoke coming out of there. There's like a little tree up here. Yeah. And then this whole thing is red, right? This is red. This is very bright blue. I love these like burst vessels here. With like just somebody really just took the time and made it really burst. Because that's special right there. In fact, it just reminds me of this, more of a Amsterdam coffee shop experience. A trip of different sort altogether. kind of really psychedelic. So don't do that. If everything's lit up, nothing's lit up, right? You don't want fluorescent colors. You know, these guys stare at the screen all day long. They don't need your little happy tree in the corner. It's not helping. This is what an interface looks like. Limit the color to really outlining important states. Use it to focus the customer, right? Now this is an interesting use case because I don't know if you can see this, but there's actually a yellow in here. Who can see the yellow? A few people. Who cannot? Or until I pointed that out? Yeah. So there's a perfect example of where it's not really color blindness, I would say, but it's color challenge, and it doesn't quite work because the purple is quite obvious, but this yellow is not. And there's no easy solution here. But at least they're trying to make it a little more, a little less realistic. So here's another example. This is another burst vessel right here. Just don't do that. I'm not going to spend my breath in there. This one's okay. This one's way better, and this one's really the best because it's not only showing trend, but it's actually showing normal line. So it's saying it was out of norm about an hour and a half ago, right? So this is a little spark line inside the vessel. That's really nice because the trends are really going to help you, and they're absolutely your friend. So this is an excellent resource that is down here. Okay, so chart junk, like the happy trees, is a problem for all sorts of industrial displays. And it's not just because we put the happy tree in the corner or the burst vessel. This is chart junk of a sort as well. This is a very typical PNID diagram, piping and instrument diagram. You probably have seen this before. So definitely pretty common and shows realistic relationships. But does it really help you reason about the problem at hand? Maybe, maybe not. Right. It just depends on what function you're trying to solve. So what we're talking about here is a mental model of a system. So maybe the pipe is there, maybe there's a lot of valves in there, but what you care about is a subset, most likely, of what's on that PNID diagram. And you really want to get into that mental model of a customer to try to understand what the heck are they talking about there. Who's seen one of these guys before? Anybody knows what that is? I showed you guys something new. Excellent. Anybody? Joint homunculus. Yes, you were the one drawing the hospital opening slide, right? I reckon. Yes. So that makes sense. Yeah, this is called a joint homunculus. A homunculus actually means a little man, and all it is a mental model of body's joints. This is used for diagnosis of arthritis and other similar conditions. So what we've taken is we've taken this He-Man out here, clearly a very complex and well-developed character with very complicated emotional states and very thoughtful, right? Full of classical drama and pathos. And we reduced him to a pile of joints, pile of aching joints. Right. So in the same way, we can take our piping diagram, right, which is really hard to make sense of because everything's pretty much the same intensity and lots of other problems, and reduce it to something you really care about. And so this is only the components of the network that really make sense to you, just this isolated piece right here, and then all sorts of diagramming that has to do with just that part. So this is what we would call a digital twin. This is a digital replica of a physical components of a system. And it's a pretty common approach for Internet of Things and more complicated industrial machines. You can just break them down into things you actually have instrumented, right? Which means things that have sensors. So maybe there's a valve, maybe there's a switch somewhere. No sensor on it, don't care. It's like He-Man's shield, right? There's no joints on there, so not part of the joint homunculus, right? So kind of keep that picture in the back of your mind. This is a screenshot from a GE demo. That's really nice right here. So if you, I'm going to give you guys a form. So if you send me a form, I'm going to send you all these links so you can watch all these demos that are really nice. This is a really nice demo of a digital twin that talks about different parts of this wind turbine. And they explain how they kind of diagnose things with a digital twin. But the number one thing is just focus on the part you care about and remove the char junk. Okay, any more questions now? Fire away.
With the chart junk example, a couple of slides back.
Oh yeah, my favorite, the trippy one. This one. This one?
The PID chart.
Oh, okay.
You went from this really complex, let's say, starting point to the next slide, the output. But how would you go from A to B?
Well, one way to do it is to take it in layers, right? Every system can be broken down. Fortunately, that is at least made by humans, can be kind of broken down into subcomponents. So you have to decide what your customer would need as the level of magnification. Because you can go down to individual valve, for example. Like this doesn't say if this is a ball valve or is it it says just as adjustable valve, right? It doesn't say the information, but you can, we've done digital twins of just a valve. And some valves are so important, like for a subsea oil rig, that valve has to operate for 10 years because once it goes down there, it doesn't come out, right? Until the whole thing is ripped out again. And it's extremely expensive, like millions and millions, tens of millions of dollars to replace. Not because of the valve is expensive, the operation. So that valve gets a lot of attention. What's the health of the valve? Is it, is it, is it open? Is it closing? Is it working correctly? So depends on the level you need to solve the problem on your storyboard. So when in doubt, consult your storyboard. What's the level of abstraction? What's the mental model that the person needs to accomplish the task? And then go from there. You can also just have them click on it, right? And then you zoom in more. It's perfectly acceptable to give them PNID. You click on a subsystem, zoom in, you get a view like this. Does that make sense? You just don't want to put like all this other stuff on top of PNID, which I've seen a lot of people do. It's not a good thing. It's just too much going on. Does that answer the question?
Yes.
Awesome. Check. Anyone else? Yeah, absolutely. I think you want to just focus on the mental model aspect and really understand that well, and then see what's the correct abstraction, right? Because even something simple as me-to-me transfer, like transferring money from checking to savings account, actually traverses sometimes 10, 12 different systems. Not to mention it's wrapped in a transaction that can be backed out of the database and all of that other good stuff, right? And now with the, what do you call it? The not the Bitcoin, but enumeration. Like you can have unique IDs with that stuff, and there's a lot going on with just a simple transaction. But for a person, it's just checking account, savings account, amount, go. Right. It's a very simple model, but what happens in the back end is actually very complicated. Great question, yeah. Anyone else? All right, let's keep going. As always, there'll be time for sure to answer questions. No worries. Okay. So I want to come back to this for just a second, because I think it highlights another really important aspect I just mentioned, which is this trend. It's almost always better than a single number. In fact, I can't think of a single reason why it would not be. So here's kind of your natural progression. You got a lot of chart junk displaying a single number. You got somewhat of a trend here, right? You got number plus a change in a trend, up or down, right? And then you got this. This is so much more interesting, because not only does it give you the value, gives you the trend, but it gives you the spark line. And it gives you a normal line. So it says, look, this went up and went down and is trending up. Right, so much more information than a single number. And that's kind of our next trip. Our next tip is to put spark lines in your displays. Spark lines come to us from Edward Tufte, and he called them small, intense, word-size graphics with typographic resolution. It's a big mouthful, but he really likes that kind of stuff. He's an awesome guy. If you don't have a Tufte book, you should get at least one, just to kind of have it. He's called the Da Vinci of data. So he's a really cool guy. So here's some examples of what you can do with spark lines. Don't have to be kind of one size fits all. You can do quite a bit with these things. The whole idea is that a word size graphic, right? Anything that's word size is going to do the trick. This is an interesting example. Anybody want to guess why some of these are highlighted and some of these are not? They require intervention. Yeah, exactly. So when I did these first back almost 20 years ago, and I was quite gratified to see somebody else do this too, because I think it's really important to say not only is it went up, but it went up above a certain number of standard deviations, for example. So you can see these are really important, right? Like this change may be just like 0.1%, but that's a statistically significant difference from whatever it was at the baseline. So it tells you to pay attention to those. So they require intervention. So that's a really interesting little tidbit, little fix there. Enhancement. So one of my favorite things to do with spark lines, and this is really good for business users and digital industrial, is to put this normal band. This is my number one recommendation to you guys. So whenever you bring one in, put a normal band on it. Normal band is just one standard deviation, 66% of the normal curve within variant. So what this tells you, more than any other representation of a spark line, it really packs the information in. And it's really kind of intuitive for most people. They understand it. They can grok it very, very easily. So this reference line is okay, right? But you don't know, like, is this kind of normal? Is this bump within the norm or not? Like, this really answers the question for you, right? And most people don't care about the high value, low value stuff. Unless maybe medical profession, that's sometimes you really care, like, wow, his pulse was at like 120 and that's like really high. But a lot of times what happens is with machines, these things malfunction. So unless you have a really reliable reading, usually max and min don't mean much. Like for example, with CPU monitoring, the CPU typically spikes at 400% because you actually have 4 CPUs stacked together. So when they open like Internet Explorer, 400%, right? So this is really very useful because you can kind of disregard the really big peaks and see how you're doing overall. Okay, so my coding smarter tip number 5 is include the spark line with a normal band if you can. But why stop with spark lines, right? You can do a lot of other interesting business graphics that don't get a lot of play. This is a bullet diagram from Tukey, I believe. So this is from Edward Tukey. And I had to put this in French because, of all the jokes that these guys are making, so I'll put this in French, just because I can. Right, so just for all you French-speaking people. This is a really nice dashboard, right? And this is what we call a bullet graph, right? So a typical bullet graph, this is the bullet part. So when it crosses that threshold, it's really, really obvious because they kind of really pop from the page, and you can tell that something crossed a target. They're not dynamic. This is a snapshot in time, as opposed to Sparkline, which is overall. And then notice something here, right? We'll return to that in a second. These are also a type of bullet graph right here. This is the anatomy of a bullet graph. So usually you have a quantitative scale. You don't have to, but you almost always have gradations of, this is good, this is okay, this is not so good, right? And then you have a goal, right? This is what makes it a bullet graph. If you got a goal, then you're good to go. In this case, it it reached the target. So that's one goal for this graph, is to clearly see if it reached the target. If you got that requirement, this is a really good one to use. Who has seen this before? A few? Oh, good. So it's new to a few of you. Good. Good. I want to be helpful, right? This is okay. Box plot is another really nice representation you can use. Notice again, this is my favorite right here. This normal band. I really hope to see that, like in 5 years, everybody has a normal band. I'll be so happy. This is like what I want for Christmas. Either that or world peace. I can't decide. One or the other. Okay, so this is another Sparkline type, but this is the box plot right here. So what exactly is that? A lot of people really get confused with this. It's also sometimes looks like this, where you don't have a explicit scale, but it looks more. This is more of a Sparkline representation because it just helps you get a feel for the data, but not exactly the full shape. So what it is it describes the shape of the data. And the easiest way to understand it is if you had a bell curve, you just went like this, right? Does that make sense? I'll show you in the next slide. But see, a bell curve basically says, I am skewed a little to the left, and that this represents my standard deviation, or in this case, 25th percentile, 75th percentile. One interesting feature of this is that it operates on median, not mean. So it shows you the distribution of points and the frequency, not the overall weight, which is why these outliers are really sometimes shown together. So here's another example of this. So you can see kind of where the points are. And yes, you can definitely show this graph, but this is a real shorthand for saying how narrow the middle part is, right? What's the distribution of your range? So how squeezed this part is versus how wide. And then also is it skewed one way or the other. So if you want to show skewness, then this is a really good plot to take. All right. So my next tip is really consider using these advanced business graphics if this is one of those places where you need to answer a particular question, and also if the space is in a premium, which, let's face it, it always is. Any questions about any of this stuff? Go ahead.
It's about the mental model. I've experienced in development teams that were so knowledgeable about the technical background of a certain subject that we kind of become blind to how the regular user sees it, or maybe we get lost in corner cases. Do you have any hints on how to handle that?
Yeah, you got to get them out on the field trip. To the customer.
So
it's not just
back
kind
in
of
the bus and go.
It's kind of misguided. Unfortunately, for better or worse, a lot of my UX colleagues might take exception to it. But for one reason or another, UX is really protective of, I'm gonna be the one visiting the customer. You can't go, because I'm like the priest of the oracle. You can't go see the oracle because you're gonna get struck blind. Nothing is further from the truth. So in my humble opinion, is the kind of the role of the UX person is to bring that need and interaction to the rest of the company. So to infuse the company with the feeling of understanding the customer, going to the customer, setting that up, saying, customer, this is our customer, this is our model, this is what they understand, this is their level of education, right? A lot of times with digital industrial particularly, you get folks that they may be very skilled in metalworking, they're not skilled at computers at all. Like, they can't even figure out how to start up a laptop. My father comes to mind, who's just a brilliant woodworker, but his hands are just too rough to even hold a mouse, right? So when I think of a customer, I picture his hands on the mouse, that he can kind of not really move it very well. So that, to me, is the moment of empathy, and that's what your job as a UXer, that's your job to bring to the rest of the company. To have that spontaneous connection to your customer and say, oh my God, they're really going to struggle with this. They're going to feel dumb. They're not going to feel good. They're not going to go at the end of home at the end of the day or whatever, feeling like they were worth something. And you want to foster the exact opposite feeling. You want them to feel empowered. You want to feel that the computer's on their side and technology's on their side. It enables them to make something that's worthwhile with their life. And that's the feeling you strive for. So if you can do that, so take them to the customer, or bring the customer to them. Sometimes one-way glass works really well, but there's nothing like seeing them in their own environment, because it's so hard to describe that. I mean, we all kind of understand office environment, but digital industrial is so different. Like an oil rig, right, in the middle of the desert, very different from two big screens in the dark, right? Both are looking at the same information essentially, but very different. Does that help?
That helps.
Yeah, get them out of there. Get them out of their from behind their computer. Yeah, definitely. All right, I want to come back to this French diagram here. So the interesting thing here is this indicator, right? Anybody knows why that's there? What is it? It's insufficient. Well, it's just, it's like, hey, it's in a bad spot, right? So it's calling attention to the fact that this is in a bad territory. Whatever it is, I can't even read this, but I don't know what this is, but I know I need to pay attention. Right. It brings up a really good point, because this many percent of males are green-red colorblind. Now, I'm not going to ask you who cannot read the chart, because it's very personal, but it actually says number 8 in there. If you can't see it, you may have some challenge with red-green. So you're in good company. Lots of presidents, inventors, and other important people were colorblind, including some CEOs I had to work for. Let me tell you, you've never shipped a design until you work for a colorblind CEO. But having had that experience, I'm well aware that that's going on. But what's interesting to me, actually, is a little aside, that only 3% of the females apparently are experiencing this. I think that and Trump's presidency is all you need to conclude that females are the superior part of the human species. All right, on that happy note. So, remember this UI from earlier? You got quite a few problems here, right? Like, this is what we talked about. Look at all this contrast here. It's really lost. And I'm not even talking about, archaic numbers that look like they came from, I don't know, open the bay doors, Hal, kind of movie, right? That we talked about other things, but this is really a problem, because if this is a condition I need to really be aware of, which I assume it is because it's red and the rest is green, 8% of your customers can't read it. And, you know, this pretty heavily male profession is getting better now, but, you know, digital industrial, there's a lot of males operating these machines. So, you know, assume 8% of your people don't know this. So you could be causing disaster and exposing your company to liability needlessly. And this is actually one of the most common problems with digital industrial displays, is a shocking number is using red and green. Green for good, red for bad. And this also happens to be the most common colorblind condition, right, or challenge. So not everyone's like on the extreme end of spectrum. Some people can still tell the slight differences, but there's quite a few people that have challenges with it. So what do you do? Well, there's a couple of solutions. One is this wonderful tool. Just Google Color Tool. Google Color Tool, right. If you Google that, it will help you come up with acceptable alternatives with color that will pass accessibility tests. So this will test your UI for accessibility, UI color choices. So if your marketing says, hey, where's my green color? You can point to this and say, hey, Google says. Right. And we all know what Google says goes. So it's all good, right? It also helps you like avoid this kind of problem, right? Whether this is, like, you don't know if this is readable or not. Like, you may be able to read it, but maybe a lot of people will do better with white text. So it lets you try all that out. Remember this one? So the issue is, of course, that this UI is doing exactly the wrong thing. And then testing these little dots of highly bright text, bright paint, you know. It's like people even couldn't tell the difference in this. Like, even normal people couldn't tell the difference. And then you got these half pixel lines up here. I kid you not, right? I almost flipped. I went like, what? We can't afford a full pixel now? Like, what the hell? There's actually a red line in there, believe it or not. There's a red and the green line, right? Can you guys even see that? Yeah. It hurts my eyes just to even kind of look at it for a long time. But so what do you do when you get that? Well, this is one quick solution. Is that better now for you guys? Can you see it? Can you see the difference? Right? Everybody see it? There's a little triangle, a little square, and these are all circles. So it's still really hard, but if you have to do something really designery like that, which I don't recommend, at least make them, you know, a decent size, but change the shape, right? And in this case, it's using a very simple principle, which is the more corners it has, the more severe the problem. Right, so triangle is the most severe, then this one, there's a pentagon, and then there's a circle. Circle means no problem. Triangle means the worst problem. Does that make sense? So, avoid using red, green only. Don't use the color only, period, I would say, but if you have to, use a different set of colors. But almost always try to add secondary indicators. Any questions about this principle? Thank you, Ben. You're a fisherman's friend. All right. Any questions? Yay, nay? This is pretty obvious, right? Don't do stupid stuff. Okay. So, this is pretty good UI, despite being somewhat sparse. And I use it as a demonstration here of, and this is from Schneider, who are known for this kind of theme. Very, very simple, very sparse, but quite workable. And it's an indication of a couple of Gestalt principles. And Gestalt is a whole series of stuff that I'm not going to cover today. But the two we really care about is proximity and similarity. Basically, all it's saying is objects and shapes that are close together appear to form groups, which means they're logically related. And if you have a bunch of stuff that looks really similar, the one in the middle really stands out. So this clever beetle is the one who turned around, and that's the one we really see. Right? The rest is kind of all run together. Does that make sense? And also, these are different beetles, but they all look like they're all kind of part of the same family. And this is the standout. Right? So, you can see these Gestalt principles reflected in this interface. Things that are grouped together, right, in these panels, they belong together, we assume. They control a certain part of machinery. And then similar indicators probably mean similar things, right? So these two look like thermometers. These two look like, they say pressure, right? So that shape is for pressure. That shape is for pressure, but it's a different orientation, must be a different device or a different metric. And these two are highlighted, which means, again, they're kind of related together. Make sense? Pretty straightforward. So use that for your advantage. If you want to call attention to something, make sure it stands out, like the beetle that turned. And the ones that go together, put them together. Okay. This UI also demonstrates another excellent, very important principle, and that of direct manipulation. Right? When we use a mouse that's indirect, everybody knows that? I mean, it becomes sort of part of our body now, like, oh my God. But then when we click the phone, that's direct. Right? When you tap your phone, everybody with me? When I click a button, that's direct. So it's direct for this device, but it's indirect for this device. So you really have to think about it. Even though most people just kind of take it for granted that you get it, when you're talking about digital industrial, these things really matter. Because whether something is direct or indirect, a touch button or a button that you actually push that has an actual click, right, feel to it, a give, these things really make a difference. So I want to encourage you guys in your work to do more of these kind of things where it's direct manipulation. So they can literally move it around and see the effect on the screen. Here's a great example of doing that. And even though you're using an indirect device, mouse, right, you're directly manipulating this data using this Sparkline-like display. So this is Splunk. Of course, anybody Splunk users? Oh, a couple. Excellent. My peeps. All right. So this is a faceted search, another great pattern to use for your digital industrial. Anytime you have a collection of widgets or whatever, we'll talk about that in a minute. But if I don't lose my voice again, then we won't talk about it. But I hope we will. So if you click one of these, it literally zooms in to that period of time. So if you see a spike like this, that's kind of outside, or look at this one, like, wow, that's like unexpected. What happened there? I can click on that directly. So it's a graph, but I can interact with it and get more information below, right? It helps you reason about the problem and move around your interface in a very efficient, quick way, which actually suits your customers very well because they do this all the time, day in and day out, right? This is kind of their life. They look at that line constantly. That's what they're like paid to do for 8 hours a day. So saving them clicks by going directly to that and then providing additional information, that's fantastic. So do that as much as you can. Here's another great example of this. Anybody knows what this is? Anybody use this? Somebody? A few? No? You have to watch this demo. This is called Keylines. And it's a component. You can buy it. It's actually not that expensive. And it's one of those things I talk about when we really get into kind of what intertwingle means. Because there's so many cool components out there now. You almost can really, overnight, scale your UI to heights never before achieved if you can throw some money at it. This is a perfect example. This is real-time animated visualization of a network. It can handle thousands of nodes, all interconnected, different colors. You can zoom in. It will just escape and like move around. But what's really cool is this time bar here. If you click play, it will actually play through what happened to your network. And this shows a couple of KPIs. Actually, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can say, this is what happened to my temperature. I wonder what made that rise. Let me back it up a couple of hours and hit play and see where the problem originated. This is a fantastic tool for RCA, root cause analysis, which is still #1 job in a lot of digital industrial. So again, check it out. Keylines, just Google it. Or if you send me an email with a form, I will send you guys a bunch of links. So this is a great example of direct manipulation. Hopefully we'll see more and more plugins like that. These are working graphs, right? These are things that people can understand and interact with directly. So use that whenever possible. Any questions so far? Going once, going twice. Okay. All right, we're almost at the end. We'll get to it soon. Okay, root cause analysis. Something I just mentioned. So I want to go back to it. This is another excellent demo from Sumo Logic. And what these guys have done is, I know it's hard to see in the back there a little bit, but what they have done is overlaid a bunch of graphs together with some metrics, right? So these are different queries that they applied. For example, here's what they said. They said, show me a CPU utilization, which is the #1 measure for the Splunk users, right? #1 measure of a computer busyness. This server, for some reason, is really busy. I wonder what happened to it. Is this a common thing? Maybe it always gets busy during this time. Well, let me apply a query and do side-by-side comparison of another graph from yesterday. Overlay the two together. Maybe I want to see my CPU and my memory. So I can do both of those. Right. This is increasingly what we see in digital industrial too. Show me my pump. Show me my pump temperature. Show me my pump output. Show me my pump intake pressure. Correlate over time. Compare with mean pump temperature for this type of model. Now show me the pump curve. I want to see the same thing. I want to see evolution of the sweet spot on the pump curve over days. And now demonstrate to me that a 20% drop in pressure in this pump, what was the effect to my system? That's the kind of conversations you're going to be having with your customers. It's not just enough to say, this pump is running. What we started with, right? Oh, let me show you like heartbeat of this pump. Who cares? Not that useful. To really get at the root, you need to correlate multiple metrics. In fact, I can almost guarantee for every single use case in this room, you need at least 2 to 3 metrics. Ideally, you have also maybe a text like a log file on top of it. So these are the kind of displays we're going to be seeing. We already see right now, like Sumo, right? But we're going to be seeing more and more of with the digital industrial. Because this type of thing combined with AI that can detect an anomaly and then kick out an alert. It's going to be extremely useful. Already suggest remediation, right? Things like, oh, it's already kicked out an alert. It created the ticket for you. All you have to do is hit send. Right. Does that make sense? So really, really cool demo. Again, fill out my form. I'll send you this, or you can just Google Sumo Logic demos. They got hours and hours of stuff. So my Coding Smarter tip is correlate different metrics that help you solve a specific problem. Does that make sense? Any questions on this stuff? Okay, we'll keep going. So this is another cool demo. This is a big panda, and it's bringing up a really important point. So I'll stay on this for a while. So what's going on here? Well, here we have a faceted search. Here I can basically search by keyword or by facet and filter by facet. And then these are alerts, groups of alerts. Now, who doesn't have alerts in their application? It's pretty common, right? Like you cannot just go up to your users and go, man, we did it. We have alerts. This is so awesome. Now you're going to get alerts. You might even get a text message or an email. It's going to be so awesome. It's going to change your life, right? Right, totally. Yeah, not so much, right? Everybody's overloaded with email, SMS, Facebook, LinkedIn, keep going, right? So too much information, too much stuff. So an industrial user, no different. All these different subsystems somehow think they own the place, right? They're going to send you 15 alerts. Oh, subsystem number 1 is overheated. The pump is shutting down. Then the pump says, oh, my recirculator is losing pressure. And then your recirculator say, oh, now your output is going to be impacted, and so you're not going to hit the production goals. And so it goes all the way up and down the stack. It's extremely annoying for customers. So what this thing does, it says, I'm going to find the root cause. I'm going to correlate all of the stack into one convenient package, which is that. So that combines all of these alerts. And worse yet, right? It's not just one alert that happens. Our interfaces are very chatty because, hey, we have alerts, right? So by golly, we're going to use those alerts. So every 30 seconds, we're going to go, hey, user, your pump is overheating. Hey, user, the pump is overheating, right? It's going to be like hundreds of alerts, thousands, hundreds per second. Some of these people get hundreds of alerts per second. Nobody can humanly possible understand, much less consume the overall picture. So management by alerts is a little bit like, yeah, I'm not going to go there, but it's bad. Managing by alerts is a bad idea. So this kind of helps solve it from the back end. But if you can do it in your interface, your customers will really help you. So if something is in alert state, move it to the dashboard. Maybe have them control the frequency. At the very least, have them pick whether they want an alert by threshold, like some kind of SLA, right? Some kind of standard delivery schedule, and then also by standard deviation. So those tend to have a little bit more of a degradation curve. Do you know what I mean? It's basically an alert that says, oh, now you're past 2 standard deviations. But over time, the standard deviations have now changed. So now you don't get the alert anymore because now that's the new normal. Creates other problems, of course, but at least give them that choice. But alert by themselves is just no longer a thing, right? You at least have to attach some remediation to it. A lot of times by the time they get an alert, it's already too late. Like in this case, if you got an alert that you got hacked, and you're a big company like Sony, well, that's too late by now, right? By the time they got an alert, it's over. Their stuff is all over the internet, right? Their guts are hanging out. It's just not good, right? So alerts are just not that resourceful for our customers. But if you are going to use them, at least aggregate them and think about the alert lifecycle from the customer viewpoint. See what other stuff they get. Are they already getting 100 alerts a second and you're just adding to the mess and the noise? They will thank you profusely. They will fall in love with your product. They will tell their friends and their customers and their customers' customers. They will say, I love this. It doesn't wake me up in the middle of the night for no reason. It's fantastic. So AI will help with this because they will just look at patterns. But really, it's all about user experience design. You have to understand what they're coming from, where they're coming from, and what they're trying to achieve with that alert. Don't just send it out and say, hey, we're done. Send an alert. We send an alert. It's awesome. Job done. So very, very important example here. So limit the cognitive loads of alerts, group them together by root cause, because that's really what they care about. So it's the root cause. My pump is overheating because the ball bearing is going bad. And then the outcome. That 20% drop in pressure has caused a 3% drop in production. Can I live with 3% drop? Maybe. A lot of times the pumps are together, right? 2 pumps per circuit. So if one goes down, the other just picks up the pace. So the worst thing that can happen is this second pump will wear out a little bit faster. Do I really need to send you 100 alerts per second? The pump has dropped 20% capacity. No. Nobody cares. I'll get to it when I get to it. Next week is fine. Does that make sense? Versus a respirator pump on my patient is not pumping anymore. Blue alert, right? Black alert. What do you call that? Blue alert, blue. Right? They call this like when the patient's about to suffocate. Right. So a very different condition, same kind of device. Okay. Any question? Questions so far? Yes, we have a gentleman in the back.
Yeah, we have a POS system, point of sale. We suppress most errors. Users only get black, white, basic interface, nothing much. We do sometimes have messages that have legal ramifications if they're not followed, like the customer needs to sign this credit card slip. We often find that the cashiers ignore these warnings. How do you get somebody to actually read the message?
Oh, that's a tough one. Yeah, because people get so overloaded. Well, it starts by not sending too many.
We send maybe one a day for the average cashier.
Yeah. What else are they getting, though, right? That's kind of, it's always the context that matters. If they're getting 100 messages a second from a different subsystem, yours might get lost in the middle.
They basically see the checkout page, the amounts they've chosen, basic information.
Yeah, I'm kind of a persuasion that the best alert is no alert at all.
Well, they have to do the alert. It has legal ramifications if they don't.
Yeah, I think sort of legally some of these systems are obligated to do that. Because of that, right? You kind of have to hit them over the head. It's like whoever shouts the loudest. I would say stick to no alert at all. See if you can solve it without an alert, right? Maybe there is a way to, like, they're giving you clear indication by not taking action on it that they simply do not have either the attention span or they maybe cannot find it. They cannot see it, right, in the stream of others. They maybe they don't understand what it says. Mm-hmm. Maybe they don't know or have permissions. A lot of times, here's a perfect example, actually, from the Splunk land, is I worked on a internet monitoring product, cloud monitoring product, that would tell people that their ELBs were unbalanced. That's elastic load balancers. And so, your ELBs are 20%. And so nobody would click on that. So we were like, okay, well, this is really weird because they're going to save a crap ton of money, right, by just clicking on that. And there's like, it tells you all the, we even put instructions in there. This is how you would solve it. And Here's like relevant GitHub links and all of the stuff. Nobody clicks. We do some investigation. This is what happened. It turns out the people that were using the product did not have permissions to go change the LB settings. So to them, it was just noise. This is not my department. The hole's on the other side of the boat. Never mind, the boat is sinking, right? In this case, costing you a lot of money. But the hole is over there. I don't even have permissions to go and muck with that. So you can tell me all day long, shout at the top of your lungs, till your voice is gone, but I can't do anything about it. So I don't know which of these is the particular problem, but I would say, see if you can solve it without an alert. If you can tell them on the dashboard, if you can prepone, it's a thing now, prepone, that's not a postpone, it's a prepone, your remediation step. In other words, go ahead and put the ticket into Remedy, ServiceNow, ServiceMax, whatever it is you guys are using. Have the automated API, put the ticket in there, and then just surface that ticket as a draft. And go, we saw this problem, we pre-created the ticket for you. It goes to our department, it has all the information in there, like all the detail of the machine and occurrence and stack and everything else that happens to it. All you have to do is click send. Like that's a perfect example of a delightful experience because I have to fill that thing out. I have to copy little strings of numbers a lot of times, right? This is a real pain in the ass. And I have to do it precisely. Otherwise, they're going to reject that ticket over there and it's going to come back to me and I have to do it all over again. Right? It's very painful. Fill out that remedy ticket correctly the first time, you're going to make some fans. They're going to be like, yay, whatever your company is, ABC company reps are here. This is great. We love these guys. They saved us all this time. I don't have to deal with remedy. Like, seriously, it's a thing, right? I mean, somebody makes 75 tickets a day. You suddenly have resolved 90% of their stuff. It's awesome. We don't think about it, but remediation step is really key. So think about like the holistic life cycle of that issue. Right. Does that help? Yeah. Some ideas.
It's something to think about, but I don't think it's the answer.
Not the answer. Okay. Maybe come talk to me after. We'll see. If I still have voice, we can talk.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Thanks for trying though. I appreciate it. It sounded like a good question.
Actually, I have a question to the previous question. Mm-hmm. Did you ever ask?
Dear.
Did you ever ask why they click it away without noticing?
Wait, this is the Belgians versus the Dutch, right?
The whole problem with this message is it pops up during interaction with the customer. And they're like, yeah, I'm busy. And we're like, yeah, it's a message that there's legal ramifications, you're going to lose money, you have to follow up. Yeah, we don't care, we're busy.
So it sounds actually really similar to that ELB. So check if they have permissions to actually take action on it.
Yeah, it's just like the receipt printer prints a receipt and the customer has to sign it.
Yeah.
It absolutely has to sign the receipt. So it's those kind of messages. It's not like phone us or file a bug report or anything.
Well, let me ask you actually, there's companies that kind of make a practice of being late on accounts payable. They make 5% on the balance. So it makes sense if you're 15 days late on a couple of $1 million, that's a couple of people's salary. Mm-hmm. You know, it could just be an unwritten corporate rule. Don't reply until it's really aged, like a good cheese, like good Gouda. You know, just really wait for those accounts deliverables to really kind of ripen, and then off it goes. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes
like,
sense. But
we don't know. I mean, take a trip and see. Like, really ask them, like, what's up with that? Like, do you guys not want this alert? And the managers might give you a very different story because they have to toe the line. As we say, they have to give you the corporate BS and say, yeah, oh yeah, we absolutely, those guys, they need to respond. But the people down in the trenches, bring them some donuts. Yeah, bring them some of those waffles you guys have, and and really kind of make friends is what I'm saying. Like, make friends with them, take them out to lunch, buy them a drink, and say, hey, what's up with that alert, man? Don't just start with that, but talk about stuff and then just throw it in. I was just wondering, this alert, nobody ever responds to that. What's going on? I mean, you'll find out all kinds of interesting stuff.
I guess a bit of it is the cashiers don't understand the corporate procedures and the relevance, I guess.
Yeah, that could very well be. Like I said, I mean, sometimes it's an unwritten rule to make accounts payable to be aged. I mean, it's a thing we found. I mean, it
happens.
We had a very similar question, very similar discussions. Like, yeah, we normally wait because we make money off of it. Yeah, all right. Yeah, Dell actually started that. Dell Computers, they literally said 60 days. 60 days net. Like, wow, they can do that. They can call the shots. Okay, so I'm going to do a quick cautionary tale, and then we're almost at the end. We got 10 more slides to go, and then we'll take more questions. So, cautionary tale from my own practice. Not to be too arrogant. Right. Obviously, I cannot show you the real interface, and that's why we have ducks. But this was a very large digital industrial firm that we were building the interface for. And they had, they were ducks, widgets, whatever, right? Doesn't matter. But when I conducted my research, I found loud and clear people needed the filters. They were like, we want that search. In fact, they told me, why can't you be like Amazon? Why can Amazon do it and you cannot? What is wrong with you people? Right? Why can't you just put filters on there? I can click on stuff and then stuff shows up. I go, we can do that, no worries. Elastic to the rescue. Everybody knows Elastic, Kibana, that whole stack. If you don't, look it up. Super easy. It's I wouldn't say anyone can do it, but if you get a specialized firm, they can stand up a page like this in about a week. Right. So if you're using anything that is not faceted search, that can benefit from having faceted search, and I do mean counts and numbers and things like categories and every other kind of facet around your data, you should do that. It's like really a nice pattern. Absolutely very useful. But in this case, they had ducks. And so, as the saying goes, if it quacks like a duck and it walks like a duck, it's a duck. So I said, clearly faceted search with ducks is what was needed. So I delivered this interface to the customer. Now, customers had a mixed reaction. They hated it. I said, what's wrong with the ducks? Don't they look nice? They said, no, we really like this. This is exactly what we wanted. But what's up with like all this wrapping in here? Like all this text is wrapping. I said, what do you mean? This is kind of a standard pattern. You said make it look like Amazon. They said, no, what we meant is we really like our Excel. That's what we use all the time. We have 128 columns this way and about 400 rows this way, and that's what we use. I said, oh, okay. So what you really need is this. They said, yes, this is perfect. Make it collapsible so that I can move it in and out. So what they really wanted, in effect, was a Frankenduck. So, innovation and moderation, right? Meet them where they are. Don't try to force a duck down their throat if that's, if they're not French. They may not like a duck. So, meet them there first. deliver them Frankenduck, and then, you can give them a real duck later. After they try it on the tablet, they go, oh man, all the scrolling left and right. These guys didn't mind. So meet them where they are first, right? Space the innovation a little bit. Space it over time. One caveat to this rule. This is for your existing customers that are doing existing product only. Who has read this book? This book has changed my life. I read it last year. One person. Guys, okay. If you get one book only, get the Kevin Chang's book on storyboarding, because I think you all really enjoyed it. If you get second book, get this one, because you're already getting my book for free, right? So anyway, get this book. It's really good. It's talking about how your existing customers are not going to drive your next wave of innovation. That's just not possible, because the existing value network is going to be all set up to move your company up market. Much like what Apple is doing, right? They have not innovated in this many years, right? Since 2012, Steve Jobs passed away. They have not made a single new thing. They just kept charging more for their stuff. And I have not upgraded my phone in probably 2 years now, 3 years. No point. Same stuff, right? So, bottom line, existing customers only, Frankenduck. Everything else, please read this book if you really kind of want to take it to the next level with a different disruptive innovation, right? This is enhancing, supporting innovation. This is all good. This is for disruptive stuff. Okay, so to recap, we want to first draw a storyboard. Consider the environment where you are. The storyboard's going to help you, right? At least model that and get the differences with your team out in the open. Hey, I think they're in the office. No, actually, they're in the field, in the desert, right? Very different stuff. Test early and often. Remember that principle of minimum viable prototype. What is the cheapest, simplest prototype I can build to answer that question? Maybe I'm at the point with the product lifecycle where I need the actual product feature to answer the question. Or maybe a simple cardboard mock-up is going to do the trick. Right. It's only you know which stage you're in. Remember to create your digital twin, to abstract mental model of what you're working on, right? Don't just kind of barf out the whole PNID at them. That's too much. Sparkline with a normal band. Anytime you have any kind of trend that you can capture, definitely the way to go, right? Just sparkline until your developers say no more, until they shout, please, the system can't handle it, right? Just keep throwing sparklines in there. The customers will really help you. We'll thank you for that. Consider as other advanced business graphics, right, that we talked about, the box plot and the bullet graph, right, that are for specific use cases. And then, like a plague, avoid these. If you must use the green and red, at least use a secondary indicator. And then use these Gestalt principles of similarity and proximity to call out attention, and also to try to decrease the noise in the interface, right, to just kind of manage attention. And then direct manipulation is always great if you can do it. Remember that Splunk graph where they click on the chart and then you get the information below? Correlating different metrics is really, really important for your root cause analysis. So bring those together. Understand what they need. For example, for a lot of server stuff, you need CPU and memory. CPU alone doesn't do it. Memory alone doesn't do it. CPU, memory, and logs is the magic 3. That can solve 80 to 90% of your problems. Right there with these 3 things. Bring those together, put them on the same timeline. Magic. So figure out what the magic number is for your customers, for your interface, and bring those in. And then, alerts are a problem. Just if you can't do without, if you cannot, at least correlate them and group them together. And then, last but not least, apply all this in moderation. Don't just give them the full duck. You can Frankenduck as needed with the existing interfaces. And now for the final little test for you guys. Remember we started with this one. See how many other, just shout them out. You don't need the mic. What is it? Radiance? Oh, gradient, yes. Oh, yeah, char junk. Don't need that. Metal plating, yes. This is like a metal plate on my head. Look at that. That's so stupid. Unbelievable. Yeah, look at this gradient. Yeah, and you got all those like crazy numbers. Yeah, good. Keep going. Right green, yes. Red green. Right you are. Yeah, there's no secondary indicator here that this is a bad number. No normal bar. Yeah, I have no idea. Is this bad or good? Yeah, exactly. Like, is this kind of how it normally behaves, or is this like a range? Yeah, like, I'm clueless. Excellent. Yeah, exactly. Like, what the hell is this talking about? Like, we really zoomed in. We can't even tell. Yeah. Small button text, I was just going to say that because I can't read this even standing right here. Like, I have no idea. This, I think, says Comic-Con. I don't know. Like, weird. And look at this legend. This is just great. And look at the contrast here. Not to mention contrast there. I don't even know what this is, much less, like, is this a spark line? Is this a number? I can't even read it. Forget it. It's a table of something. Like, look at this contrast, right? You got this dark, terrible, depressing blue background. Look at this band. Look at the spacing right here. Oh, my God. I couldn't possibly make this graph any smaller, could I? And yet, no vertical axes on this one. Don't know what they missed with that. And look at the legend. The size of this legend is like 40% together. 40% of all this other chart junk here. This is like really nice. It's wrapped. Like I'm standing next to the freaking machine. I cannot tell that it's corrugated or whatever that like I know what this is. Oh yeah, look at that. That's a great contrast right there. And this thing is turning red or is it blue? It's very bright. So when everything is bright, nothing is bright. Everything stands out, nothing stands out. It's not quite as psychedelic as that other mushroom interface, but this is pretty close. I can't tell, like this could be, I don't think this could be any smaller. Anyway, you get the idea. So I think you guys, you can see the difference when I first put this up versus now. So I think that was 2 hours well spent. Am I right? Yeah, all right. In that case, please thank your sponsors. Rooks and Rosenfeld. All right. And thank you, Zier. All right, excellent.
Can you stay up here? Can you put on my presentation? Is that still possible?
Yes.
I have 4 slides left, so then you can enjoy a drink or go home or do both.
It's coming. There
Go home drinking, yeah. Yeah, that's the one.
Where do you want to start?
Yeah, over there.
This one.
Yeah, sure. Oh, does it fit? Okay. This was my question slide. Any last questions? Anything you want to ask Greg while he's here? No, you really ask it all. Okay. You told them all. That's really nice. Then we have this thing where we vote. So can I see some votes for people who think this is really not so hot? Hands up if you think this was not a good idea to come tonight. See, one guy over there, yeah. Okay, so anyone who thinks it's hot, hands in the air. Oh, yeah, that's going.
Right.
Okay. Oh,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, then it's time to thank you.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, sure. We made a lot of jokes, as you know. Yeah, this is thank you. Okay, I'm going to give you 2 presents. Yeah, sorry, it's the Belgium joke
It's
again.
yeah, I know.
You can put the blame on Hans.
It's coming.
It's coming. I give you this first.
Thank you.
You can open it right here, and then I will put it on the screen. We understood that you want to learn some Dutch words, and you thought you were in Belgium. I mean, you might want to raise your kids here. So.
Oh, look at that! This is exactly what I wanted.
Yeah, this is exactly what he wanted. This is a.
Yay! Look at that.
Okay, so it's in Dutch. So it's a song about Belgium and why you would want to live there.
Fantastic! I love it.
So I don't know if you even have a CD player. Do you? Do you have a CD player? It's
I
ancient.
do. Yes,
but
yes,
okay.
in my car.
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
That's the only one.
Put it in your car. In a few weeks you can sing along. And just because you're in Holland, this is the Dutch gift.
Excellent.
It's
not cheese, is it?
It's not cheese. Don't know if you can bring it in a plane. So this you can take home and you can show your family.
Can I open it?
Yeah, you can open it. Sure.
Open it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because I have it on the
you,
screen
guys.
as well.
Oh,
So it's
no.
there. It's just Holland from above. And,
so this is where the cheese is made.
yeah, you know. Yeah. So you can show your family.
I love it. Thank you very much.
Where you came
this
from.
is great.
Cool.
This is like the view from the train, right? Coming here. Very nice.
It's
beautiful.
Holland.
Thank you very much.
So a big
Really
round of
appreciate
applause
it.
for Greg once more.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. There's one more round of applause coming because a couple of days ago this venue looked like like what? Like an empty load. What's a load? Anyway, it was empty. There's a lot of people I want to thank, but I'm not going to call any names because then I forget people. But can I have one big round of applause for everyone who made this possible?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's something wrong with the slides, but that's okay. This is our Keep in Touch slide. If you want to know more about us, we have a thing called Seeds to Meet. And we have, you can just see where we are. Come visit us. And I want to thank you all for coming tonight and have a safe drive home. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Greg.
Well, I have a gift for all of you guys. I keep forgetting.
The link.
The book, yes.
I didn't put it in.
I am
Forgot
so
it.
bad. Okay, here. I'll just put it up here. And there it is. Hopefully you can see it all. So I made a very simple bit.ly. You cannot mess it up, right? It's right here in big giant letters too, right? So just type that in. There's a short little form. Just your email, give me the real email that you want to get the book at. I promise not to spam you guys. This is just to send the book. Okay, that's all I had. Thank you so much. Yes. Oh, and please, just for yourself, right? Don't post it on social media. Don't post the book. You can post a link, but not the book. The book is just for you guys, right? Just for personal use. Bring it to your team. Hope it was useful. Thanks again.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Fantastic.
That was
Thank
cool.
you.
Que toca goza. I said I like it like that.
I said I like it like that.
said I like it like that.
I said I like it like that. Diamond district in the jazz. Certified, you know I'm gas. Drop the top and blow the brand. Oh, he's
Tell me what you're crying for. I'll wipe your tears all up. If you're so taking love, we'll come for you for sure. If we're caught in a wave, I will carry over. It don't matter where you are, I'll be fine. When my ex comes back, you could put an ocean in our love, love, love. It will keep us apart. You could build a wall, I will run it up, 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 just to get to your heart. If we're caught in a wave, maybe we'll make a way. You could put an ocean between our love, love. Shadows play on, I don't aim. I lose myself, I do. But I find my way to velvet chains. I'll crash right into you. If we're caught in a wave, I will carry you over. It don't matter where we are, you're still the one I choose. When my echoes in different directions, you know my heart's never on the move. And in the dark times, you don't have to question if I'm where we are. You could put an ocean between our love, love, love. It will keep us apart. You could build a wall, I will run it up, 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 just to get to your heart. If we're caught in a wave, maybe we'll make a way. You could put an ocean between our love, love, love. It won't keep us apart. You could put an ocean between our love, love, love. It won't keep us apart. You could build a wall, I will burn it up, 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 just to get to your heart. If we're caught in a wave, maybe we'll make a way. You could put an ocean between our love, love, love. It won't keep us apart.